Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I have with me the lovely Kate Austin. So Kate is founder and CEO of Pinchapoo, a grassroots startup turned national not-for-profit organization that was originally founded on the idea of pinching hotel toiletries to positively impact the 1 in 5 Australians experiencing hygiene poverty. And over the last 12 years of operations has supplied in excess of 8.5 million products in that time. So that's where I'm going to leave it. And we're just going to dive into the conversation because I hear more about it. Thank you so much for joining me for starters, Kate.
Thanks for having me, and hi everybody.
It feels like a really important thing to shed light on. And I know that more and more, you're seeing things around hygiene poverty and having conversations around it, but it does feel like a useful and a needed conversation to kind of normalize the need for hygiene products, because it can be I feel like traditionally it was always that thing that was like, oh, we don't talk about what we need.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So tell me about the genesis of Pinchapoo and where that came about.
Sure. Yeah. No, I do want to get back to your point about it being kind of an unspoken about topic. So we'll definitely get to that. But yeah, always good to have a bit of context, I guess. And my story, well, I guess my reason, my purpose for staying on this mad roller coaster ride kind of started when I was in my mid-teens, when I was forced to leave home in a situation of domestic violence where I nearly lost my life, which sounds very dramatic, but was very true. So there was things were escalating at home, and there was one night where I'd sort of been kicked from one end of the house to the other and had suffered some broken bones and ribs and things, and the only power that I had left to fight my dad off at the time was in my legs. So scurried up onto my bed and used my legs to fight him off. So it was at that point he picked up a cast iron chair and held it above my head and went to put it through my skull, when my brother ran in and again, sounds very Hollywood, but saved it just before it went through my head. So I knew that I needed to leave very quickly and very unexpectedly. And I was 15, 16 years old. So you think you know everything there is to know. And I guess I speak a lot about instinct, but I totally just let instinct override me in the moment. And all the things that I thought were very important to me, at the time, and I'm a bit older than you, Jess, but at the time, it was my CDs and my Kelly Slater staffing posters, all those things that I thought were so deeply important.
They're important.
Kelly Slater will always be important. Yeah. But they were the things that I really thought, made me. But the one thing that I was scurried to find and to take was I ran into my bathroom and grabbed my toothbrush. And I remember thinking at the time, holding this toothbrush and thinking, what a crazy thing to think of, but I didn't question it. I just grabbed it and I ran with my clothes on my back. So I didn't know where that was going to lead me, but I knew I was in a pretty crappy state, and I could at least brush my teeth and feel, you just, it's almost a fresh start. Yeah. Yeah. So I could at least brush my teeth. So I did do that, but obviously it wasn't very long before I knew there were, probably a few other things that maybe I should have thought about in the moment and that I went without. So that journey led into a really many years of a dark space for me. So I made a very conscious decision to stay at school. I got my way through year 12, but I became a very different person. I was, at the time, I had the lead role in the school play and, was the lead singer of every band and, was that girl. And I very quickly became, very introverted and lost all of my self-confidence, because I was that kid that wasn't sure where I was going to get the next bottle of shampoo from, or the next chance to wash my hair, or, who was going to supply pads next period, things like that. So it was, it really deeply changed the essence of who I was and my ability to connect and contribute to, my world, my little bubble at the time. So I got through school, and then thought I'd conquered all there was to conquer in the world, as you do when you're 18 years old, and went off and lived a really happy, healthy couple of next years. And then unfortunately, PTSD is one of those things that comes out of absolutely nowhere and blinds you like a freight train. So it hit me really hard. And so I spent probably 8 years in a really crappy place. This is really depressing, but we'll get to the good stuff, I promise.
There's a journey here that you're taking us on, so I appreciate hearing.
Yeah, that's it. It was a very dark space, and I ended up with OCD as a fallout of that, because my brain was trying to create distractions, and so that was awful, and I spent most of my days wishing I was dead. There's no other way to sugarcoat that. So on a particular day, which happened to be one of my worst, I had spent the day kind of looking at the secondhand. I broke my days down to minutes. So I had a watch, and it had a second hand. And sometimes it would just be, make it to the next time it hits 12, make it to the next time it hits 12. So I did that, and my husband came home from work one night. I jumped in the shower, and we had been away a couple of weekends before, and I had pinched my hotel toiletries, as you did before we were allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, as it used to happen.
And no one came out with it, but I had pinched my hotel toiletries, which is perfectly legal. Let's just say that before we go anywhere else.
Like, I've checked, it's legal.
It's legal, I promise you. It's included in the cost of your accommodation. So I started aimlessly, staring into space, washing my hair with this little bottle of shampoo, and I had the most profound moment that will never leave me as long as I live. I'll think about it on my deathbed. I had what I describe as this lightning bolt, like this iron bolt that just went right through the center of my being. And I just had this moment, and I thought, what if, right? How great is the statement, what if? Because you just don't know. It could go anywhere. And I literally said to myself out loud, what if I got a few people to pinch their hotel toiletries, and we could help just a few girls, just a few people in situations like I had been in, and knowing the power of, something simple like that. So I honestly, in a moment, was almost cured from this awful time in my life, and purpose is such an unbelievably powerful thing. And then just as quick as the PTSD had happened, purpose had come along and taken its place. So I knew straight away it was going to be Pinchapoo. I knew it was ridiculous. So Pinchapoo is short for pinch a shampoo. Yep.
Yeah. No, I love
it. And I knew straight away. So I kind of, like a proper crazy person, ran out of the shower, dripping wet, stark naked, screaming Pinchapoo. My husband. There's a visual. Sorry, everybody. My husband said to me, slow down. What are you talking about?
Grab a towel, honey.
Yeah. Let's talk after when you've got a towel. Yeah. So yeah, he sat me down and said, love it. But the first thing he said to me was, love it, but you can't call it Pinchapoo. And that, again, that night was so full of these deeper, profound moments. But I knew that. Sorry, my phone's doing something weird. I knew that, that's what it had to be. It had to be cheeky. It had to be unapologetic. It had to reflect who I was. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing, I think, when you come up with something is when somebody else says you can't, because that's their boundaries. That's
their limitations there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to take that on, but I knew in that moment that that I wasn't going to take that on, and I wasn't going to settle. So,
well, you kind of strike me as the kind of woman also who, if someone says you can't do that, you're like,
You sit back and watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm engineered like that, but just for everyone's peace and comfort, he's no longer my husband, so it's all good. Okay. There's no more you can't, so it's okay. But so that's kind of where that journey started, and I guess the context as to where the concept came from. And yeah, and then the journey was very hard and fast after that. And from, you know, being able to help, you know, what I thought was kind of this, you know, cute, realistic goal at the time, you know, a few people, we now help over 750 different charity partners and hundreds of thousands of people. And so from very little things and little moments, big things grow. So we're immensely proud.
Yeah, like I just have full body goosebumps as you were saying. I'm just like, yeah, like it is real cute. These little, like the word cute is correct, right? Like it's like, oh, it's real cute, these little ideas that we have, and we're like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? And then
they can be something big. I mean, people with some of the greatest ideas ever started off with those cute moments that you speak of, but they had the guts to follow it through. And I think that's the difference. Explore it if it feels right and it feels, you know, something that is profound to you and something that you are deeply passionate about. You know, what have you got to lose? And I had nothing to lose at the time. I didn't want to be here, so anything above that was something amazing. So
yeah, there's so much. Thank you for starters for sharing all of that, because I feel like I am of the belief, and I would never force people to share their stories, but I'm of the belief that when we share our stories, we are here to share stories, and if we don't,
it's a powerful thing. We got to connect. We've all got stories and they're all amazing and they're so individual, and we can all learn and be inspired from everyone. So there's an old saying, and I'm not religious at all, but it's a ripper, that, you know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that's for a reason, you know.
Yeah, it's it. And I can I can't relate to the experience, but the idea of what would I grab if I had to leave the house? Like, what would I need? Like, because, you know, you kind of like, well, I don't know. I always went like, okay, well, like if there's a fire or something, like what would I grab? Obviously I'd grab, you know, the dog and the whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I need my skincare stuff, because otherwise, like, what do I do without it? You know? So it makes sense to me that that's what you grab, like your toothbrush, because it's what makes us feel, like we're taking care of something.
Yeah, and like that one thing that you can do for yourself that's like a reset button, you know. And I just and I have to be honest with you, I walked out of my driveway and it was just such a cliche night, the most horrific weather and pouring rain, and I walked out of my driveway and I remember looking at my hand with this bloody toothbrush in it going, what's your plan with that, Kate? Like, what are you actually going to do? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Toothbrush. Yeah.
So something bigger than me, I think, was taking me on a journey. And obviously it was a horrific night, but I'm at a point now where I'm so healed that I see how significant it was and how it had to happen to lead me on this path.
I think there's always opportunities. Like, we don't always ask for situations, and they don't always need to happen as such, but there's always opportunities that we might be able to find in them as well. And where it's led you to, like,
crazy journey.
It is amazing the impact. And let's come back to that, about like the conversation about hygiene and normalizing that too, because it's amazing the impact, like you said, your experience still in grade 12 of going from this real extroverted girl to an introvert because your basic hygiene needs and rights to hygiene. And I really want to specify that. I believe, like,
yes,
we have a right to hygiene. We have a right to have clean hair and to, you know, like take care of our skin and brush our teeth and have sanitary products that we need. Like, you know, like it's a right to hygiene. And how that impacted how that impacted you, and how that changed your whole,
the course of everything, really. Yeah,
like your whole personality almost, because you were just like, well, I'm focusing on how I don't know when I can wash my hair next, or like, you know, like what's going to happen if. And
it's I don't know, I don't think I've ever really been able to find the words for it, to be honest. I think it's such until you're in that situation, and maybe, you know, people who are listening, watching can can maybe just pause and take a moment to think about what their day would look like without being able to brush their head, do their teeth, have a shower, you know, things like that. How would that actually affect their day? So we know that, you know, just on hygiene poverty, we know that, you know, Australia are very good at reporting on food poverty statistics, and we hear a lot about period poverty, you know, which is really a very niche part of a much bigger conversation. And those stats need to be heard. And I guess after doing what we've been doing for 12 years, I personally now have really stepped into an advocacy role where I need that message to be heard and I need action to be taken. And we're running a pretty crazy cool event in December, which I can talk about, that'll certainly get a little bit of attention in true Pinchapoo style. But it's important to talk about the fact that if you're shopping, and this totally makes sense, right? If you've got $150, $100, whatever left to feed your family, you're filling it up with food, right? Bellies have to be full. You're not putting pads, you're not putting deodorants, you're not putting those things into the trolley. So those food statistics are directly, you know, proportionate to the hygiene statistics. But we need to start talking about both sides of that coin, because it does have a deeply profound effect on your life and really does inhabit the way in which we connect and contribute to the world and our self-worth. So
of course it would, right? Like if I haven't been able to shower and I don't have deodorant, that's going to impact how much I want to be around other people.
Absolutely. And what people think of you and your mental health. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board after probably 7-8 years, and we sat down and we said, right, we are doing a really good job of getting to people who are in the system, people who are under the care of an organization or who are being supported by the government, and we're doing a great job of that. But how do we stop this next generation from being affected by hygiene poverty? And so we did a lot of research, and what we found out was that kids develop their sense of self-worth between the ages of 5 and 10, and then again they lock it in at around 15. So that's kind of a developmental stage that I guess isn't really spoken about. And that self-worth forms the forms the basis of every decision that we're going to make throughout life. So, you know, am I worthy? You know, do you want to go steal a car? No, I'm better than that. Do you know what I mean? It's a total flow-on effect. So we put into place a schools program that actually catches that developmental time for children and gets kids discreet access to personal hygiene products through, you know, using school nurses and welfare coordinators and chaplains who are aware of those immediate kids in need who are slipping through the cracks, who don't necessarily qualify for any type of you know, funding or care from an organization. So being able to get to them and hearing back from schools about, you know, how all of a sudden they're putting their hand up to answer the question in class. They're not the one that's got head lice all the time. They're, you know, they're not bullied as much. You know, they're having positive interactions with their peers again, you know, like that's really profound stuff, and we have to start talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, of course it's kids, because I have distinct memories of like, and I still remember their names of the kids in primary school who were the ones.
Isn't that awful?
It's awful that we're bullied because like maybe they were a little smelly, or, you know, like, or maybe they always like their hair was never brushed, or they always had the head lice and everything like that. And it is such a powerful thing because there's been such a stigma around it. There's been such like a less than around it, and it's not
the fault of the kid. They're a victim of circumstance. No one chooses that. And I mean, I've got one story I can share about which is a lazy Friday afternoon. Everything seems to happen on a Friday in Melbourne. We received a phone call from a principal in New South Wales. So we've got about 300 odd schools on this program, which is really cool. And we'd love to have a hell of a lot more, but it is what it is. Funding's good fun. And she just got on the phone and she just bawled her eyes out like a 3-year-old, you know, and they're like, and like,
oh my God,
can't get any air. And we were like, oh my God, stay down, take a breath. What's happened? And finally got her to calm down, and bless her, she told us the story of a year 9, year 10 girl who was the popular blonde, long blonde, amazing, pretty girl that everyone wanted to be with, and she had contracted head lice. And because her parents couldn't afford the cost of treating the head lice, they had pinned her down and shaved her head. Which is, I know.
Yeah, like just...
It's one of those, sometimes you hear stories and you go, oh my God, that's horrific, and you don't take it home. That's one that I think will always,
oh my God, that's
really get me. Yeah. And it's so easily treated. So we put head lice kits in all of our schools boxes and things, so that doesn't need to happen anymore. But they're the ones we hear about, and it's just, this poor girl went from being that girl to recluse.
Oh,
horrific. I know.
And that's awful, because like that's just like a flow-on effect of the conversation around hygiene poverty and how we have conversations around it. What have you noticed the most about how it's changed, how the conversation has changed from when you started to now? Because there's been a decent chunk of time in there.
Yeah, there has been a decent chunk of time. I definitely think one of our greatest areas, I think, of growth or gain in that space is actually talking about men's personal hygiene needs. Yeah. So traditionally, again, to your point at the start of when we started talking, was that it's a taboo thing. Guys are tough, they don't need stuff. There's this whole bravado around that. And we when we set out, we were very clear that there was no discrimination about who we were supporting. Men, and we believe men have got equal rights to all of these products as well. So that's been, I think, the biggest shift for us when we're dealing with organizations is oh God, thank God there is now somebody who takes care of men's specific personal hygiene needs. And now that people know they can access it, so many people do come forward and go, actually, I do need the help. So I think there's been a real shift there. There's always kind of, I guess, been a little bit more focus on what women need, particularly in a menstruation space. And I think Share the Dignity do a great job of kind of owning that conversation. But I guess we're trying to tackle it from a more broad perspective and inclusive perspective. Yeah.
The holistic conversation.
Yes.
If we're going to have a conversation about hygiene poverty, it's about humans. It's not about any gender. And I noticed that about Pinchapoo as well. Like there's a very specific message that it is open, like it not just open, but inclusive of any gender. Like, it doesn't matter.
Across the board, we've been inclusive and on 2 points. The first one is when organizations come to us, sometimes they have a very clear idea of exactly what they need, exactly what size, exactly the living situation. Sometimes they go, we need help. We don't know how to, sorry, my phone's ringing. Sorry, people. We don't know how to, have those conversations with people, because they're, they come to us and say, well, we've got people who are non-binary, and we've got people who are menstruating and not menstruating, and things like that. So it's a pleasure, I guess, an honor for us to be able to sit down and go, right, tell us about the people you're helping. We can provide something that's safe, culturally appropriate, gender inclusive, whatever it might be, and then provide that. So I guess that's something that sets us aside as well. We don't just kind of have this standard blanket aid that we do. We work with individuals to work out their situation and work out what the best way is to support them through their disadvantage, whether it's temporary, whether it's crisis, whether it's, a long-term generational thing. But it's great to be inclusive. And the other thing that makes me immensely proud is that over a quarter of our workforce, our volunteer workforce, are those with special needs. So we're someone who, opens that door to everyone, and there's a role that everyone can play. And we work deeply in a space of, with Down syndrome individuals, and they're just the light of our life. We absolutely adore them. They work their butts off. They love having a place to belong. And I think we get out of it more than what they do. We just
Oh,
adore
yeah.
them. So yeah, so we want to be inclusive across the board is my
Well, there's
point.
opportunities, and it's the recognition, and it sounds like you're changing the conversation and the paradigm around what is accessible in several ways. Like hygiene, yes, what is accessible, like even the culturally appropriate products. Like I remember a conversation a few years ago, I think Halsey came out and was like, like the products in hotel rooms are for like white people's hair, which is very, very different, and has very different need, like, well, like arguably has less needs than, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
that is important to consider. That honestly I had never considered until that conversation happened. I'm like, oh, of course, like, of course. But
Absolutely. We live in a Western world, but also a lot of the people we're working with are, refugees or Indigenous communities, things like that. And if you provide them, say, tampons, for example, instead of pads, that's deeply offensive to their culture. It's deeply offensive to their religion. So that is really important to us to say, who are you supporting? What's the situation? How do we provide the best outcome for everybody?
And but it's also it's the hygiene, as well as is like you're changing the conversation around what is possible.
Sure, yeah, and connection. A lot of the work we've done throughout COVID in particular has been, and I guess it's different for you probably to even try and grasp, Jess, in beautiful sunny Brisbane.
Yeah.
But Melbourne, we've ultimately been in lockdown for 2 years, and so people who have been whizzed off the street and thrown into commission housing and completely isolated from any of their networks. Sometimes those networks potentially have not been very good for them, but still they're extremely isolated and they have no family, no connection. And so even just having a pack and having a social worker or someone be able to knock on the door and say, hey, I have something for you. How are you doing? And just open a conversation. So
having someone that who is safe, that they can kind of just share with,
and that person's not coming to ask anything of them, they're giving something. And so I think as we go along the journey with Pinchapoo, I understand more and more that it's less about being able to share sometimes, and sometimes it's just that someone's thought of what your individual needs are, and that you matter enough for that to be a thought process for someone.
That your needs are just as important as, like, and it sounds cliche as I say it. I was like, yeah, your needs are just as important as anyone else's, but it is. And I remember having conversations with clients and with myself, like, because I talk a lot about communication and boundaries, right? But this is reminding, like, there's this lens of it that's not boundaries, but it's the same line. It's like, just because I'm stating my needs or that I want my needs met doesn't mean I'm putting them above another person's. It just means that I'm saying they're just as important.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Why do you have more or less right on anything for anybody? Yeah.
I think when people, and this is that understanding and learning and realization that had made me previously aware of this, is like when people are like, well, but if I say what I need, if I communicate what I need, it's almost like I'm asking too much, because there's this misunderstanding, this misconception that by saying what we need or by wanting what we need, we are also saying it is more important. But it's like, no, you're just saying it's important too.
I think it's a kind of a deep set Australian cultural thing that we when we state something, there's this immediate judgment that, they're so needy, or, what gives them the right. And it's not, it's got to stop. It really has to stop,
because
unhealthy.
We get to want what we want, and we get to need what we need, and voice that as well. And also, and again, like, recognize that coming back to the hygiene thing, that is a right. Like, it is a right. It's not.
It is a basic human right. Absolutely.
Right. And
we always say it's actually, it's a basic human right, but it's actually essential to our physical and mental well-being. So
and
without it,
like, it's
absolutely
everything. Like you were saying, it's about how we connect with other people, and how, like, not even just confidence, but just being willing. Like, if I haven't brushed my teeth and I leave the house, like, masks aside, right? If I haven't brushed my teeth and I leave the house, that's a thing for me where I'm like, oh no, like, and it's not even about breath, it's just a thing. Like, if I've brushed my teeth, that I feel ready for the day and I can have any conversation. Otherwise I'm distracted. So maybe I'm not in my A game, or maybe I'm like just distracted and I'm not showing up, or I'm not connecting as much, so subconsciously as well. So like, imagine that happening for people who also have a lot of other things happening in life that are actually impacting.
Oh my God, it's so compounding. And and we often hear the story of the decline of people. And it sounds like I'm putting a crazy amount of, inflated worth on this. But, we hear stories of executives who, have potentially made some bad financial decisions, whatever. And it comes down to the point where they can't shave, or they can't get a deodorant on before a meeting, and then all of a sudden their presentation isn't as good, and then they start to fall. And so that decline sometimes can start from just the simple things in life. And so we're on a mission to put a good bloody dent in that number. I mean, 1 in 5 is a huge amount of people to be impacted by a social issue that we're not talking about.
Yeah, it's too many. I also love the number of 8.5 million products.
It makes me go cross-eyed.
Yeah, like, because I'm like, yep, that is can't even fathom that, and you've done it. Like,
it's crazy numbers. And we say to people, they say, oh, how many packs do you do a week? So we do between 8 and 10,000 packs a week, but which sounds like a lot, but if we had the money, the funding, the room, the space, we could do 50,000 and it still wouldn't be enough. Like, people are so unaware of the need and the impact. And so that's why these opportunities and conversations are so important, Jess, that we, wherever we can, we have the conversation and delve into it. So I appreciate it.
No, I love these conversations because they make me broaden my awareness more in itself. Like, even if I do already don't, or either way, like if I don't already have that awareness, but even if I do, I like it because I feel like we were saying earlier before we started recording, like having conversations helps us learn and understand, and we need to just allow ourselves to do that more. So that's probably what I get the most out of these different conversations. And it's kind of self-serving in that way, but it's not, it's just fun.
So you're doing that. You're doing what we just spoke about. It's okay for it to be self-serving, right? And it's okay for you to get some joy from what it is that you do. I mean, we live short lives. That's right.
Like, and joy is the right word for me as well. Like, we have to, and I think that's important to bring in too, like, because you are clearly passionate about what you do, but you are allowed to experience joy, which is a whole conversation that I probably have a soapbox that I carry around with me. I'm just ready to put it down and be like, we're allowed to experience joy in our work, in what we do, and we're allowed to experience joy regardless of what we've already been through. And we can experience joy in our work supporting people who may not be feeling joy in that moment too, because it's not about taking that away from them. It's about, well, the more each of us are filled up in some way, the more we contribute. And just listening to you and your energy around it, there is a joy and there is a passion in what you do, and that doesn't take away from the people like that might not be feeling joy about their situation, which is totally
no. And you get on that soapbox. It's such a bloody good point. I honestly
do more. It allows you, it's a conversation about wealth as well, right? Like, it's the more successful you are, or that Pinchapoo is, the more you can do with it. So the slight tangent, but it's still important. Like, it's
so true. And I have learned the hard way. I've had a traditionally a real heads down, bum up kind of approach to what I do. I don't love the spotlight that comes with it. Sometimes I just want to get shit done. Can I say that? Sorry.
Absolutely, you can say.
I just want to get it done. I just want to help people and just do the work. And for me, every single morning I get up and I go, how many people get to go to work and help thousands of people that they will potentially never meet, right? Or well, probably 99%. You don't know if you're walking past that person.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the magic for me, is that we're all kind of connected through kindness and joy in our own ways, but we don't even know it. I think that's human nature in a nutshell. But I absolutely feel joy for what I do. And yes, you've just had some pretty crappy stories. We hear crappy stories, we see crappy things, but knowing that you have been able to impact that in some way should absolutely give you joy. That's like payday as a not-for-profit, to hear those stories.
Keep us going. And it's important because like when we talk about heavy topics, we can also get caught up in but remember this and remember this and remember this. It's like, yes, and that's what's driving me. And
absolutely.
That, not the stories obviously, but I love it. Like I love that I'm like there's an impact being made and I can do something and help in some way, no matter how large or small.
And we all can if you want to, there is a way that you can. We all have the capacity, and it's a huge, if my kids were here, they'd be like, oh, here she goes again. But
yeah, she's like,
I always say that we all have the capacity to help, and this is why we work with special needs guys, because they get written off. They
don't need to be, because they are completely whole human beings.
Absolutely. And we see the ability, not the disability, and everybody has a different capacity to help. Some people can't walk, but they can sit and stick bags, or they can sort through, you know what I mean? There's a job and a purpose and a space for everybody to impact, but you have to want it bad enough. And you have to follow that, I guess, that force if you have it inside of you, and it's not inside of everyone, but it can be found, I think, if you want it bad enough.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so where can people follow Pinchapoo or you or the work or support or anything? Throw it at us, and I'll include it in like the captions and everything.
That's all our questions. I guess all your basics, Instagram, Facebook. Just if you just search up Pinchapoo, we're on the World Wide Web, as you would imagine.
I should hope so. Yes.
yes. And also, too, if anyone's listening and wants to get involved in a really cool kind of capacity, we're actually working with Guinness World Records, and on December 5th we are going to be breaking not one but 2 world records, because we don't like to do things half-assed.
Go full ass with that. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. So at Caulfield Racecourse in Melbourne, we will be running an advocacy event. So the first world record we will break is the most amount of the biggest word made out of tables. So that word will be #hygiene-poverty, and it will be made out of 501 trestle tables. So that will be a workout, lifting all of those.
Yeah.
So that'll be really cool, because it's it's very visual. Yeah. It's very visual. It's very, I guess it's tangible, and people can see it and look into it. So you'll definitely see that in the media. And then the second record that will happen on that day is the most amount of hygiene packs made in an hour anywhere in the world. So, which is,
do you need volunteers for that?
Yeah. So anyone in Melbourne can reach out and work out. We can give you specific jobs, or you can come and be a packer. There's lots of different things, but it's all on the website. So check it out. It's good fun. As I said, we do very serious work, but we like to have a really good, fun, joyful approach to what we do. And so it's always fun to be part of things. We don't take ourselves too seriously.
You just can't.
Nope.
Oh my God, Kate, thank you so much for this conversation. I really, truly enjoyed it and loved it, and I feel like they're just important conversations to keep having. So I'm so grateful for your time, for coming on and for sharing with us and helping us all kind of expand our awareness around these important issues too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and apologies for the little breaks in film, everybody. We've had an epic storm here in Melbourne last night, and we have no power, so I'm on my phone. Apologies, but it's so good to talk to you.
Oh my God. Yeah, you've been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jess.